Days with My Stepsister had its first episode come out a few days ago, and yes, it's a romance. A slice of life romance. That sounds gross, but honestly, this first episode wasn't objectionable. There was no, oops, forgot to lock the door, or anything like that. Honestly, to the contrary, this episode had great presentation. It was slowly paced, taking a lot of time to show characters doing mundane things over moody music and shots that are very different from the usual anime slop. I mean, look at these. Some of these feel downright symbolic. This episode also does a lot of indirect storytelling with lots of little visuals and lines of dialogue that seem to imply certain things without characters explicitly saying what's going on. I can appreciate that. I also appreciate how the show opens. We get scenes of our main duo from before they've met, all of which are in black and white, as they both ruminate on the relationships step-siblings often have in stories like this and in real life. What they said was kind of philosophical, which I did not expect from a show with a title like this. It said a lot in the context of the story, and honestly, I don't want to get into all that with this video, but I will say this opening's playing a big role on the meta stage. The show knows it's a step-sibling romance, and if it leads with a short, thought-provoking exploration of the step-sibling dynamic, it reassures the audience it isn't going to be some gross mess. It's the show's way of saying, yes, this story will probably be about step-siblings falling in love, but please God, don't change the channel. Our main duo is Ayase Saki and Asamura Yuta. Their parents are both single and have decided to marry one another. This first episode shows Saki and her mom move in with Yuta and his dad. Watching them, you get the feeling that underneath the calm surface, they're all carrying some level of trauma from ending up in single-parent households. When we see these parents and children interact with one another, it's implied that each of the kids is already more mature than their parent in some ways. Yuta reminds his dad where things are, and Saki points out that her mother is very easily swayed into buying things. The parents are lacking a level of put-togetherness that you'd expect from an average adult, and honestly, that makes sense. Losing a mom or dad in any manner can often damage the parent left behind, leaving kids to grow up quick, sometimes supporting their now damaged parent in some ways. Basically, the show is subtly pulling at our heartstrings. After being shown two families, each a little broken, the show is implicitly asking us, don't you want to see them come together and make a better life? We didn't really get into how either household ended up losing a parent, and I think that's actually very intentional. When do you ever talk to someone about your trauma? Depending on the trauma, you likely only ever talk to people you're close with about it. I think Yuta and Saki will get into their past with one another when they're closer. My guess is that we as the audience will learn about Saki's past when Yuta learns about hers, and we'll learn about Yuta's past when Saki learns about his. So we can experience that story at the same time as the listening character, which will help plant our minds deeper into the story more than a casual line drop about divorce ever could. Though again, I don't know, this is just a guess. Overall, I like the story, I like the characters, I like the presentation, but, well, listen, I watch a lot of anime. Generally, I don't really care what the setup is, including in this instance. I just want a good story that has good presentation. And while this show has both at the moment, I can't think of a step-sibling romance that I'd prefer to a non-familial setup. I want to recommend this, but if you pick it up, just keep in mind that the story might implode into something gross. You've been warned. That's it for me. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.